long time since we've done a video. We recognize that. We have to apologize to all of our followers, our friends, our family, anybody that's actually paying attention to our YouTube channel. We've made some major life changes and got caught up in moving and changing and just being.
Now, in our defense, we did have 2 videos completely done and ready to load up as soon as we got someplace with internet coverage. But when we got someplace with internet coverage, I found that we had lost the videos. I have no idea where they went.
It happens. What are you going to do?
Yeah. You probably recognize the fact that we are not on the boat. We're actually in Dusseldorf, Germany, where we're doing an extended house sit. We made a strategic decision that we were going to gratefully decline our commission on board Private Island. Ray and Tanya are out enjoying the boat in the Mediterranean someplace right now as we speak, and I'm sure they'll continue to do so. So thank you again for the opportunity, Ray and Tanya. In this video, we're going to catch you up on where we were, all the different places we've been since we did our last video, and kind of what's going on in our life and where we're going from here. So thanks for hanging in there with us. We'll do better going forward.
In our last video, I think we were just leaving South Africa.
That's right. Ray, Tanya, and their son Eddie, and you and I were all headed out to cross the ocean.
Our big adventure.
But alas, we had some technical difficulties. We had to turn back to the coast of South Africa, where we spent a few days sorting out the problems, and then we were off again.
When we finally got out of the African weather pattern, it turned into a beautiful sail. We had the wind at our back, and we took, I think it was 12 or 14 days.
But we worked our way all the way over to St. Helena, which is in the middle of the ocean. St. Helena is actually in the middle of nowhere, as you can see on this map.
It was very remote.
When we got there, it was New Year's Eve, and we had to get a COVID test before we could come on land. So we had to wait 3 or 4 days for them to be able to come out and give us our COVID test after the holidays. But we finally got tested. Everything was fine.
We got to spend a couple of days on the island. Eddie went up the steps.
We didn't go.
We did not go. No.
But we brought provisions. We got everything we needed, and we were ready to head out again. From St. Helena, we went up to an island off the coast of Brazil. This little island is called
Fernando de Noronha.
Fernando de Noronha. That's exactly right, Fernando de Noronha. I will say that leg of the trip was not without its challenges. We had a few little problems. For instance, the fuel pump went out on the generator.
Right.
So every morning we had to get up and transfer fuel from the main tank into a carboy and gravity feed it down to the generator so we could actually have power on the boat.
And when George says we had to, what he really means is he had to.
Yeah, so it was nice to get to Fernando and find a beautiful cove to hang out in. We did find a fuel pump on the island and got that all sorted out.
And we reprovisioned and
enjoyed some
couple
sunsets.
Of days, and then we were on our way again.
Ready to go again. We worked our way all the way up to Grenada, or Grenada.
I think it depends on where you're from as to how you pronounce it.
But we went to that place. The little towns around the island were fantastic. Eddie and I did some scuba diving. And this is where Tanya, Eddie, and Ray left the boat.
Right.
They headed off to go snow skiing.
And our new crew came in.
So our new crew consisted of Judy, an old friend from San Diego, and a buddy of hers from Massachusetts, Gary. So right. Judy and Gary joined us, and we headed even further north.
That first leg was, I think it was 4 days, 3 or 4 days. It was a pretty brutal leg.
Yeah, we were beating into the wind the whole way north. We were very happy to get to a little bay on the coast of Puerto Rico. And what a beautiful bay it was.
It was probably the calmest place we've ever anchored. Honestly, yeah. It was really a nice stop.
It was a very pleasant stop. All too soon, we had to leave and headed north again. Our plan was to celebrate Judy's birthday in Grand Turk. You remember that?
Yes. Unfortunately, Grand Turk did not cooperate.
We got there, and they required us to have a COVID test, a PCR test that was less than 48 hours old. Unfortunately, it took us more than 48 hours to get from Puerto Rico to the Turks and Caicos. So 4 days later, they said, you can't come on land.
They were totally unprepared for entering yachts.
They did allow us to buy fuel.
They let us purchase fuel and then asked us to leave.
Which we did. So what we actually did is we snuck a little bit farther up the island chain to a little area called Cat Island. And we went on board and had a nice dinner on Cat Island. We finally got time to celebrate Judy's birthday, and it was a nice stop there.
It was a very nice stop. There was a nice little restaurant, nice little island, and of course we were finally in the Caribbean, so we had some great weather.
Swimming, snorkeling,
Right.
It was fun. From Cat Island, we worked our way up through the Caribbean and into the Bahamas, where we stopped at an area called the Berry Islands.
Right, Gary's daughter and son-in-law own the Soulfly Lodge.
A fishing lodge where they fish for bonefish. So Gary and Judy went in and spent some time with Gary's family, and that left Bonnie and I on the boat to do a little soul searching of our own. And during this time, we looked back at our trip and made the realization that we really didn't like doing ocean crossings on a sailboat. And that's when we reached out to the Smith family and made arrangements to hand the boat back over to them. We did agree that we would take the boat to Fort Lauderdale.
And work on some of the repairs or changes that Ray
Upgrades.
wanted to make
Yeah.
after having spent a couple of months on the boat.
Yeah. So we took the boat over to Fort Lauderdale. Once we got to Fort Lauderdale, we took the boat up through the intercoastal to Lauderdale Marine Center.
Well, it was up the New River,
Yes.
which was
Not the intercoastal, the New River. You're absolutely right.
it was a very tricky little maneuvering up the New River. Lots of S curves and blind turns, and not something you want to do in a sailboat.
Once we finally got into Lauderdale Marine Center, we hauled the boat out. You can see it getting ready to go back in the water here. While we had it on the hard, and we stripped off the vinyl wrap, we cleaned and repainted the bottom. We put some stripes on.
Right.
So I think it looks much better white.
Yeah, I like it white.
Yeah, it looked better this way. We continued to work on the boat, and while we were there working on it, some friends came by. My buddy Art came down from Atlanta, and we did a bunch of work, but we did a bunch of fiddling
Playing,
and playing music
right.
and having a great time.
And Jesse came up from St. Lucia. Jesse had been the electrician on the boat in South Africa in the 3 months it took us to get up to Fort Lauderdale, had moved to St. Lucia.
So we had him come up from St. Lucia, and he did a bunch more electrical work on the boat. And then also my brother-in-law Doug came by and spent a few days with us and did some more work on the boat.
Good to see him.
It was good to see Doug. What we did decide about the New River was, though, if you want to go up and down the New River, you should take the Jungle Queen.
Yes.
It's a paddle boat that goes up and down the river, and that way you can have cocktails and listen to their pithy tour and enjoy the time on the river that way.
Don't have to worry about the wind pushing you into the into the banks of the river.
Once we got most of the repairs done, Ray came back and met us in Fort Lauderdale, and pretty soon it was time for that last cocktail with Ray and to say goodbye and to hit the road.
Again.
So we packed up our stuff, and this is what we travel with as we did before. Our 2 roller bags, a couple of backpacks, and some instrument cases, and headed west.
We went to Las Vegas,
It was Becky's birthday.
and it was a much needed break between working on the boat and playing.
We had a great time hanging out with some of our favorite people in the world, celebrating Becky's birthday. We went to restaurants, we went to bars.
We ate, we drank, we gambled.
We actually won some money. Had a great
icing
time
on
in
the
Las
cake.
Vegas. Yeah. After Las Vegas, we worked our way down to San Diego.
And we went to visit our hometown peeps.
Yep. Our friends Chris and Van were nice enough to put us up in their gorgeous new home, and even threw a party and invited all the old deck bar crew to come over, so we got to see everybody while we were there. Almost everybody.
Really nice to see everyone again.
From San Diego, we went up to British Columbia.
For our first house sit in almost 2 years.
Yep. It was a great house sit. We were looking after a dog named Chutney. Chutney, I got to say, was one of the smartest dogs I've ever run across in my entire life.
It was pretty amazing how intuitive he was.
The only thing that he did that I thought was kind of weird, though, was he barked at dogs on the TV, dogs and horses on the TV. He wouldn't chase a rabbit, but he would bark at dogs on the TV. But other than that, absolutely amazingly clever dog.
And
we had a great time in Canada.
A beautiful area.
It was green, the air was crisp. Yeah.
Yeah, British Columbia is gorgeous anyway, and it was just a really nice sit.
Yeah. Had a good time there before we headed east for another house sit
New York City.
in New York City. Now, I have to say about New York, I haven't been there since I was a kid. And I was a little bit concerned because my impression of New York was that people were going to be bossy and short-tempered and everything was going to move fast. But I was pleasantly surprised to find everybody, almost everybody except a couple of Uber drivers, everybody was absolutely delightful. We ate and ate and ate. We did a house sit and looked after a couple of really cool cats,
The Spice Boys.
Basil and Sage. They were absolutely hilarious. And also while we were there, we were lucky enough to have some guests.
George's mom and niece Sydney came up to visit. We did a bus tour. We went to the Lion King. We did dim sum. We had a great time with them.
We had a great time. And then Bonnie's cousin Marcia and her partner Cheryl came.
It was so hot that weekend.
There wasn't a whole lot we could do but bar hop. So we were forced to bar hop our way through New York with them. It was a blast.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
We had a great time. And no sooner did Marcia and Cheryl leave than George's sister Marty and her partner Brian came to visit.
And we ate more. We went to other good places to eat with them. So we just had a great
Deli.
time. Yeah, absolutely. When we finished up in New York, we took our first transatlantic flight in quite some time and headed over to Spain.
We went to Madrid. We only went to Madrid. We didn't even visit anywhere else in Spain. We spent 4 days in Madrid.
And we were lucky enough to catch up with my buddy Jose. I used to work with Jose before I retired. And Jose took us on a pretty amazing walking tour of the city.
Yeah, I think we walked around the city for 3 hours before we stopped for tapas, because of course it's Spain. And
Ham and amazing food.
Right, and Jose's the one that turned us on to apparently Madrid makes vermouth, and it's like bars make their own version, their own brands.
We went to a little bar and tried out the vermouth. It was quite the show with them presenting the vermouth and making the drink in front of us and everything. And it was very tasty as well.
It was surprisingly good for sweet vermouth.
A couple of days later, Jose invited us into his gorgeous home. Unfortunately, his wife and family were already over at their beach house, but he invited us into his gorgeous home and made paella for us.
And it was very good paella.
It was. I always grew up with paella having seafood in it, but Jose explained to us that real paella was meat-based, not
no seafood in
seafood-based.
paella, real Valencia paella.
We rented a car and headed up north.
To France.
Court d'Issel, France, which is a beautiful little town, city in the clouds.
It was just outside of Toulouse, as the map shows, and we were looking after
Mocha and Ella.
Mocha and Ella. In this beautiful little stereotypical French village. I mean, every morning we'd walk the dog and we'd go down to the cafe and sit and have a coffee or a beer and watch the people go by. Every Saturday they had a farmer's market, a great farmer's market.
And the house itself was fantastic. It was carved into a hillside. It was almost like a little hobbit house with a round kitchen but it stayed really amazingly cool.
Considering it was in the 90s, the entire time we were in France, it was amazing.
The house stayed amazingly cool.
So we were there for a week, right?
Before we jumped back in the rent-a-car.
We drove
Headed
back to
Spain. This was good too because we got to keep the rent-a-car the whole time and we didn't have to pay for a one-way drop. So it was pretty cheap to have the car and drop it off.
And then we were in Spain, I think, one night before we caught the bus with Pueblo Inglés, which is the English language school that we were volunteering in.
Now, we've done English language schools before, so I want to spend a little bit of time and tell you about this because it's something very cool. In essence, there are people in whatever country you're in that want to improve their English, but they don't want to have to take a big expensive trip and go overseas someplace to practice English, but they do want to get immersed. So Pueblo Inglés brings together 20 or so students and 20 or so native English-speaking volunteers.
And the English speakers are from the States or Canada or England or Australia, New Zealand. I mean, anywhere, if your native language is English, you can volunteer with them.
It was a great deal for us because while we were there, our housing, our meals, all the wine we could drink, everything was all taken care of. So it was basically a free week for us. And for 12, or in the case of Spain, 14 hours a day, we spoke English. Now, if you're thinking you might want to go over and spend a little time in Europe, this is a great way to do it because, first of all, you get to meet some fascinating people. You get to experience local culture, and it's basically a free week. You got to get yourself there. But I'm going to put a link down below, so if you're interested in doing the language schools, they have them for teenagers, young adults, and for old people like us.
It was well worth it. It's a good time.
Pueblo Inglés is a very cool thing. After Spain, we headed north again.
We're in Dusseldorf, Germany now.
And in Dusseldorf, we are exploring the city. We did a beer tour.
Of course, because it's Germany.
Learned about the German purity laws, how they only allow 4 ingredients in their beer. And we've been wandering around town. We're looking after a couple of chubby cats. Digger and Cato. So what happens now?
We'll be here for another 4 weeks or so, and then we're off to Vietnam.
That's going to be really cool. We're going to fly all the way down to the southern coast of Vietnam and go and rent an apartment in Da Nang with an ocean view.
New country, new culture. I'm excited.
So expect lots of videos from us from Vietnam.
Can't wait.
So, we will do better about our videos, I promise.